I've always maintained in photography that you can have the most expensive camera and lens, do all the planning and preparation, arrive at the right time, be in the right place, but if you don't have that one extra element on your side, you're not going to get that prize-winning picture. And that element is what I'm going to be talking about in this video. So the extra element that I'm talking about is luck, and in this video I'm going to show pictures from two recent trips to Horn Mill Trout Farm near Rutland. On both occasions I used exactly the same camera and lens, took pictures from exactly the same position, but I was only lucky enough to get the pictures I was after on one occasion. So on both of these trips the luck element was the wind direction. For getting shots of birds taking off and flying towards you, the direction of the wind is of vital importance. Birds like to take off into the wind, so if you want shots of the birds flying in your direction, you need to have the wind coming from behind you towards the bird. If the wind is coming towards you, the chances are the bird will take off flying away from you, and then all you do is get a back view of the bird as it's flying away. Ideally, the best shots are when the bird is flying head on towards the hide, as in this shot. For those who've never been to Horn Mill, it is one of the best places in the UK for photographing ospreys. The hide will accommodate 6 people, it's quite spacious and has very comfortable seating, and the hide position is sunk into the ground, so it's very effective for low level shots as the birds dive and take off. The pond in front of the hide is stocked full of fish, and the ospreys realise this is an area where they can easily feed. I went with friends from my camera club, and on both occasions we had 5 dives each session. You can book the hide from the Horn Mill website, and they do 2 sessions a day, one early morning from 4 o'clock till 8:30 am and then an afternoon evening session from 4:30 to 8:30 pm. Because ospreys will sometimes fly and dive without any warning, they do have a spotter who will radio into the hide to say which direction the osprey is flying in from. Most times though, the osprey will fly up onto a large oak tree on the left hand side at the back of the pond. They can sit up in this tree for quite some time before eventually diving. A good indication of when they're getting ready to dive is that you will see them moving their head from side to side as they try to gauge the distance and the angle of the fish. On our first visit, which was an early morning session, we had 5 dives. On the first few dives I used the OM1 Mark II combined with the 40-150 f2.8. You don't need a long lens for the diving shots. Initially, and because the light was poor, I shot wide open at f2.8 and I used ISO 8000, but as the light started to improve I reduced the ISO to ISO 1600 and I added the 1.4 converter to the lens to give me a little bit more reach. On the very last dive of that first session, when the wind was luckily in our favour, I did manage to get this sequence of the osprey as it took off and flew towards the hide. The sequence was shot using SH2, which gives 60 frames per second, all raw files. On our second visit, which was an afternoon-evening visit, the luck was against us, and on this occasion the wind was blowing towards the hide. Consequently, as the ospreys took off, each time they flew away from the hide. Again we had 5 dives, and each time all we got was a back view of the osprey as it took off, flying away from us. I found tracking them as they dived incredibly difficult. It's a lot easier taking shots of them after they've dived and as they're taking off. The bigger and heavier the fishes that they catch, the longer it takes for them to get airborne, so all my best shots were when the osprey had dived and then started to take off. Like with any hide photography, you can have long periods of inactivity. Fortunately, there are other birds to keep you occupied. Because of the number of fish in the pond, you get frequent visits from other birds. There are plenty of egrets and herons prowling around the edges looking for an easy meal. This heron was obviously not the sharpest tool in the box when it tried to take out a very large dead trout, which is almost as big as it was. One bird that kept us amused in between osprey visits was the kingfisher. On each side of the hide, quite close in, are two nicely positioned branches for the kingfisher to fish from, and we had numerous visits on both sides of the hide. If you want to get a decent sized image of the kingfisher, you will need a long lens. This shot was taken with the OM1 Mark II and the 150 to 400mm, sometimes even engaging the 125 extender. As I said earlier, tracking the osprey as it dived in the water was incredibly difficult, or I found it so anyway. I tried tracking it and following it as it flew down, and every time I failed. The autofocus initially held the bird as it dived, but as you never knew which part of the pond it was diving to, keeping track of it in the viewfinder and keeping the bird in focus was very difficult. Annoyingly, the autofocus usually lost it the osprey would be diving to. This was the best I got, and it was the last dive of the evening around about 8:30 PM, so it was a ridiculously high ISO and a huge crop, so the quality is quite poor. On the plus side, it does give me a good reason to go back next year to try and improve my diving shots. As I said at the start of the video, it doesn't matter how expensive or how good your camera is, if luck's against you, you're not going to get the shot. Obviously though, having good equipment does help an awful lot. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did and found it helpful, please give it a like, subscribe to be notified of future uploads, and please put something in the comments. I do try to answer all of the comments. Thanks for watching.